Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the ITB 2022. Welcome to ITB Berlin Convention. It's great to have you digitally on board again this year. My name is Katie Gallis, and I will be your moderator for the upcoming days. But I'm not alone. I'm not by myself in the studio. With me is the head of ITB Berlin, David Ruetz. Good morning.
Hello, Katie. Good morning.
Good to see you, David. Could you give us, I just mentioned full days are ahead of us, but what can we expect from these days, David?
In numbers, we have roughly 225 speakers and over 100 sessions in these 3 days. I think we cover a wide array of topics, by the way, who are being broadcast into 120 countries live, which is great, because the world needs messages of hope these days. We have been focusing in the last months on 3 pillars. One pillar is resilience. That is a topic that we want to address with the tourism industry that we want to discuss. The second pillar is digitalization. That is something that we have to live with and that we will live with. And the third pillar, of course, is responsibility, sustainability, and these topics are the main tracks at ITB Convention and also will be the tracks throughout the year.
Can you tell us what role does Georgia play this year at the ITB Berlin Convention?
We have been partnering with Georgia already for 1 year. They were last year our adventure and sustainability partners. This year they are the cultural partner, and next year they will be the official host country. And we're very much looking forward to a destination, from my personal view, yet to be discovered. I think from what I saw and from my visits in Georgia, the secret of tourism in Georgia is not its pristine nature or its biodiversity or different climate zones from sea to mountains, but it's the hospitality of the people. It's the spirit of freedom and entrepreneurship that we could feel there, and that we hope they will bring to Berlin next year.
Thank you very much. That sounds like a very interesting program. We are very much looking forward to that. Thank you very much. And of course, the program, as David Ruetz just mentioned, focuses on resilience, on sustainability and digitalization. And that goes out also, of course, a thank you to all the sponsors, the World Tourism Cities Federation as an overall sponsor and Mascontour as the track sponsor of today. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, even if it's your afternoon or your early morning or your late evening, depending on from which time zone you are joining us, please join us also digital in our social media platforms. We are on LinkedIn, we are on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook with the hashtag ITB Berlin Convention. And we're reading all the comments, your thoughts and of course your questions. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And now we are coming to our next speaker. I warmly welcome now Mariam Krivishvili, Deputy Minister of Economy and Sustainable Development of Georgia. So greetings goes out to you, to Tbilisi. Hello, Mariam.
Hello, Kate. Hello, David. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to attend the world's leading travel trade show, ITB Berlin, and welcome the sector's most prominent representatives. We have gathered here to share experience and inspire tourism professionals from the global travel industry. First and foremost, on behalf of my country, Georgian people, and personally myself, allow me to express our solidarity and strong support to Ukraine. Georgia stands with Ukraine as we are truly aware of the price of peace and freedom. Georgian people showcased support by providing humanitarian goods to Ukraine and hosting Ukrainian tourists in hotels and homes during these challenging times. This is a watershed moment for international community when the whole world should unite the efforts. And I believe that amid various challenges, tourism has a great power to unite people, spread peace, and build prosperity. I would also like to extend to all of you my most sincere congratulations on International Women's Day. This occasion gives us a useful opportunity to reinforce the fact that women play a vital role in tourism around the world. During the following 3 days, tourism professionals from the private as well as public sectors will be demonstrating best practice examples and providing valuable insights into the areas of digitalization, resilience, sustainability that represent key drivers of tourism industry redevelopment. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that Georgia achieved many successes through tourism and has grown to become one of the examples of how a small nation can transform itself through the sustainable development of the sector. In this light, we are honored that Georgia is a cultural partner on ITBBerlin, and I'm confident that today is the right momentum to mark the unity of our nations and our people, and landmark time for peace, innovation, and development. Finally, let me use this opportunity to express my belief that ITB Convention 2022 will be conducted successfully and productively, and I hereby declare the ITB Convention open.
Thank you very much, Mariam Krivishvili, and greetings goes out to Georgia, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, ladies and gentlemen, of course, join us digitally with the hashtag ITBBerlin Convention for a digital debate. We are thrilled to read your comments and your thoughts on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And also, of course, also be part of our podcast, Travel Hero. Listen to the ITB podcast. And now, with further ado, I'd like to go on with our next ITB deep dive concerning the global tourism demand forecast. The experts from Statista know more about that, about travel and tourism in 2022, especially in these times. From Statista now, here is Peter Kautz.
Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. We are very happy as Statista to be part of this historical ITB convention. We brought a couple of topics to actually allow us to look into the future a little bit together. And on our first kind of slide, we see also what this kind of consists of. We do have different elements. First of all, I would like to show you a little bit the agenda of my session now. And we cannot really go into such a session and not addressing the current Russian-Ukraine war. I'll share about certain facts which we feel are important to mention. We then start into a topic which is called the travel plans for 22 and what the forecast looks like. Before we do 2 deep dives, if you like, so in terms of the booking and expenses of current travelers and future travelers, but also how do the individual attitudes toward travel, towards the community have changed and potentially will change even further. And looking into it, I just want to quickly say, who am I? I'm the Managing Director of Statista Q. I do have the pleasure to lead our data-driven project business, and personally I'm just passionate about figures, about assessing trends, and hopefully will be able to help you a little bit in terms of how can this journey look like going forward. How do we assess certain elements? And we usually combine aspects as Statista. One is around really truly asking people, so that we do a lot of primary data collection. For this session here, for the convention, we've actually surveyed over 6,000 people, and the results I'll share with that in a couple of minutes. We do also do a lot of market modeling. We do have a market model kind of outlook, modeling the entire global travel and tourism industry, and we supplement that by robust secondary resources. I'll share that as soon as we get there. Coming to our current most pressing, I have to say, tragedy in the Russian-Ukraine war. So considering it kind of fact-wise, we do have, or we talk about markets which consist of Russia and Ukraine on the one hand. They're contributing 2.6% of the global travel industry, as well as nearby countries. And from an inbound perspective, these contribute roughly 5% of them. So overall, 8% of the travel and tourism industry is affected. As you know, you always do also have the other side, so the outbound side of travel. So how many people, how many citizens travel from one geographical region to another. And here we do see that these two countries contribute 3.2% to the overall global travel industry. And it goes without saying that certain countries are more affected by what's happening now in terms of on the ground, but also in terms of sanctions. The majority of the Western countries puts on Russia. And you do have countries, the number one destination, Turkey, for instance. This will kind of see impacts of Russians not being able to travel there any longer, but also other countries which are kind of more effective. Overall, we do need to kind of assess what do these kind of external shocks, this kind of severe war really means. And here it helps to look into the history of things. What you see here on this chart might look a little bit kind of complex in the beginning, but I'm happy to guide you through here. This is based on data from IATA, from the International Airline kind of Association. And what you see is that they assessed certain external shocks, financial crisis, the Gulf War, second oil shock, and compared it to the overarching kind of trend and development of the travel industry. And what can be clearly seen is that in the first kind of 2 years, so period 1 and 2, actually you see a decrease of about 5% of the global passenger kind of volume. But then pretty soon, after latest 2 years' time, and actually it rebounds. And also it is worthwhile in these kind of tough times to also consider what kind of impact did these individual events, and I don't want to compare them to anything which is happening now, but it perhaps still helps to realize that all these kind of major external shocks or situations back then never really impacted the travel industry in the long run. Perhaps that gives us some hope going forward. So I'd like to go into another topic and into the travel plans of 22. And for that, we actually have asked travelers, people who can really give us an idea of how has the situation changed in recent years and how is it going to look like going forward. What you see here on the left-hand side is the actual permanent impact people believe COVID-19 does have on their travel behavior. And I find that remarkable, and that's the reason why we put it up front here, is that more than every other traveler truly believes that COVID, that a pandemic like the one we've been seeing, is actually having a real impact on how they travel. It doesn't need to be bad, I come to that in a second, but still, and that's what you see on the right-hand side, it changes the way they actually travel. It might change also to the better in terms of how much people are willing to spend, because that's actually going to increase, and that's what you see, that above 40% of the people in these kind of 3 countries, Germany, US, and the UK, actually most likely spending more money on their travel habits going forward. But there's a clear change. What we've been seeing, that actually the domestic travel has gone up in certain countries, 50, in certain others, even 100% in pandemic times, and people just stay more locally. That's the bottom of this chart. What you can see, left-hand side is the kind of the recent 24 kind of months. On the right-hand side, you see the upcoming 12 months. And on both kind of charts, you see very high numbers, close to 90%, kind of that people have traveled domestically in the recent 2 years, but still roughly 70% are going to stay local or domestic. A value which has always been kind of higher in places like the US, for instance, but also for Germany remains very, very high. Though you do see that long-haul flights to Asia, Africa, also Latin America is on the rise. People can think about kind of actually also going more in kind of a long haul. This might be an aspect which you might consider and also feel as positive going forward. Here, we do see that 60% of people actually saying that they intend to travel next 12 months, while that's what you see on the right-hand side. Still, the pandemic, and I got the question earlier, the pandemic is still number one reason why people might want to kind of reconsider. And this is something we need to bear in mind when it comes down to, hey, what does it mean for the travel industry, for policymakers going forward? Always needs to be a little bit of also endurance or kind of also habit. And one habit which has remained the same is actually the reason why people go on traveling. And here, in the 2 European countries, we've been seeing that actually beach vacation is not just the number one in their markets, but actually has gone up by 30, respectively 50% in terms of reason why to travel. This is what people kind of missed most. That's how it seemed. And this is what they now are going to do in the next 12 months. In the US, it also has gone up. Here, you do see that the reasons for traveling are also more relative and family related. These are still the top number 2 reasons to travel. And also kind of the destination and the selection of the destination pretty much depends on more traditional, long-lasting kind of factors around climate, around nature and landscape, but also, and this is something which is obviously important these days, around safety. It needs to be safe where you want to go, because otherwise you might want to kind of consider. We also thought it's worthwhile to talk about changing behavior and also the lifestyle habits we have been seeing in mostly urban, but also in suburban regions where people combine or do get another opinion or behavior when it comes down to how do I combine private life and working life. There are various kind of aspects you can consider. The one we kind of thought bringing here is the term workation. And what you can see here on this chart is the trending curve of the term workation when it comes down to global search volumes in recent 2 years. And there's clearly a trend upwards. This is even bigger in countries like Germany. This is even bigger, obviously, in bigger kind of metropole kind of areas. But there, people, especially between the 20s and 40s, think about kind of how can I kind of optimize or kind of can combine work and private life. And this is something we always should bear in mind. To sum it up, this chapter, we can and should kind of consider where this kind of overall global market is going. And we do see that by the end of next year, actually, we have fully rebounded from pre-corona kind of level. And while we saw that the travel volume globally went down by 60%, we have been seeing increase of more than 40% in the recent 2 years. And we are most likely to see that this kind of stays and then growth within still grows kind of in the years going forward. And on the right-hand side, what you can see there is actually that it is not just driven by the number of travelers, which are kind of going up again, but it's also driven by the money they are willing to invest, the money they're willing to spend, because this average revenue per user or per traveler actually is also going up due to higher kind of expectations on their travel in terms of safety, in terms of also where they want to go, but also probably because people saved up some of their funds to now really use to travel again. Let's zoom into what is the behavior like when it comes down to travel bookings and also in terms of expenses. Massive chart, but I'm more than happy to kind of go through here. On the left-hand side, what you see here are the top sources for inspirations. On the right-hand side, you see where people kind of inform themselves when they actually think about a travel destination. Picking Georgia, so first, how do they get to know Georgia? Secondly, on the right-hand side, how do they inform themselves about places and destinations they want to kind of go to. And it's interesting because also in these times you feel that like friends and acquaintances are still the number one source for people for discovering new places. Especially Germany as a country kind of with 42% of people saying, I do get to know of travel destinations by talking to my friends or to my family. And this is followed by travel site or online sites. This is still kind of, TV is still a factor which kind of plays into that one. And something which kind of a lot of people do have on top of their mind, social media. So isn't it that kind of certain kind of social media platforms are the number one kind of source for discovery? This is not what we right now can see in the numbers. This might go up, but still is kind of considering, you see a little bit in the middle of the chart on the left-hand side, and other kind of sources are still more relevant. Right-hand side, similar kind of picture. Then obviously it gets more operational. People want to kind of book. They want to kind of get closer to the organizations which actually help them then also doing the travel. And hence travel site onlines or tour operators kind of go up in terms of importance of channel. Two elements we highlighted here are kind of specific to the US, where we saw there's an kind of the importance of tour operators are actually very low and have kind of constantly decreased. Here in Europe, or so at least kind of considering Germany and the UK, tour operators are still in a better position and more relevant. That's an interesting one, and hence we put a couple of circles around it because it tells you, or it gives us at least an indication of where do people kind of actually book their vacation. So discovery, information, booking. And here, Germany, it is that it gets more and more common to actually book on comparison booking portals. 37%, that's a top value. While in the UK, it's still kind of then that online kind of tools and websites of travel agencies are the number one choice. And the US is more kind of in terms of they start the booking procedure often on airline kind of online presence, and here it's the top value. The online shift, which has been around for quite some time, was something we were debating, and we weren't sure how this is actually evolving. But we have to say that also the pandemic didn't increase it any further. This kind of share of online versus offline generated revenues. You see that this is a constant, pretty linear kind of growth in terms of online generated revenues, but it's not accelerating due to the pandemic. What is actually changing, what has changed dramatically, and also bearing in mind what kind of people told us, travelers told us, is the flexibility, which is on the rise. People want to kind of be more flexible. One of the elements is that they are not willing to book as early as in the past. So what you see here is that when do I book a travel destination? On the same day, shortly before the trip, 1 to 4 weeks in advance. And most severely, you see that trend in terms of 1 to 4 weeks in advance kind of has gone up as a kind of the time when I book my travel, kind of 40 to even over 70% in various kind of countries. This is now the most important time period when actually travels get booked. I think a very important shift, and also thinking about what kind of people now expect. This is something which will stay to a large extent. The second element of being flexible is, hey, what does it mean financially? And obviously there the insurances come into play. And we do see a strong increase in terms of the demand for insurances. And here the two top kind of insurances are kind of travel health insurances as well as travel liability insurances. Obviously, you see a risk-averse country such as Germany have always been kind of higher up in terms of what's the share of insurances, while also now the Anglo-Saxon kind of countries are picking up and it gets more and more important. Coming to budget, and usually it's good to have a zip beforehand. What are people kind of willing to invest for their travel plans? And here we do see an increase. That's what I mentioned already before. So the average revenue per traveler, per user kind of has gone up and is likely to go up in the future. And this, to a certain extent, might be kind of accelerated also by kind of current situations, as we discussed. Russian-Ukraine war, kind of the impact on energy prices will even kind of most likely accelerate that phenomenon. And here we do see that people, and more than 50%, for instance, of German kind of travelers are willing to spend more than 2,000 euro on their travel. So actually travel budget have gone up. Now, as I believe, one of the most interesting aspects. So travel and, so to say, individual attributes. How have they evolved? And the one thing I want to kind of clearly point out, because it's also something which is on top of the mind of a lot of kind of people being in the industry, is how do we kind of get out of this pandemic situation? And will it affect us? Will it affect travel booking going forward? And here we got a clear signal. On the left-hand side, you see about 80% of all travelers. They do believe that actually it will have an impact on different levels, but it will have an impact on their travel going forward. Zooming into what does it mean? It means I want to avoid kind of big kind of crowds. And here, every other, or in kind of in Germany and the US, even more than every other kind of travelers, wants to avoid kind of bigger crowds while traveling. And also in terms of how do I act during my travel, you do clearly see that people become more careful. And also, obviously, and this is something probably which is also part of the routine already, kind of bring their protective items such as masks or others. And what do I expect? And because this is important, right? So one is kind of how do I behave? The other one is what do I expect from market players? Could be travel tour operators, could be hotels, could be policymakers. What do I expect from these group of people which allows me then to travel at the same level or even at a higher level? And number one topic which was mentioned was the money back guarantee, if any kind of cancellations occurs. And this is particularly, once again, risk-averse kind of countries such as Germany, Switzerland, etc. are ranking higher on that one. But this is what you see on the left-hand side of this chart. 45% expect that. Other topics which are kind of relevant, and I feel which could be something we all together should kind of work on, are topics around kind of what kind of information do I get? I don't want to have conflicting information. That's what you see on the kind of third part, kind of 36% saying, hey, I do want to kind of have consistent information, because otherwise I'm getting kind of concerned, I'm getting confused. And then there are aspects around kind of testing facilities, masks, etc., which people do believe they will remain going forward. Last but certainly not least, I want to kind of move into a field of the sustainability of travel and the expectations from people towards climate change. And here it's a clear signal. Over 60% of the people believe that climate change will have an impact on travel behavior. And then, not necessarily, but to a certain extent, in contrary to that, just every 1 out of 4 travelers on average actually do have changed their travel behavior already in terms of long-haul flights, but also in terms of general kind of behavior. And that's what I found interesting. We debated that quite a bit, because what does it mean? Does it mean that I don't walk the talk? Could be. But could it also mean that I haven't got the opportunity yet to change my behavior? Is that something which is kind of coming up pretty quickly? I think it's a bit of both, but something you should bear in mind, kind of thinking about how do you want to kind of position your offering, how do you want to kind of also adapt to this rising trend and demand. And once again, what is the expectation of travelers in terms of policymakers? And here we do have some interesting figures. We do have a figure which stands out, which is with respect to kind of certain bans for private jets, which came up highest in one country, that was Germany. 28% believe this is an appropriate kind of measure to take. But what kind of all three countries do have in common are two aspects. And this is the certification process of eco-friendly resorts or ways of kind of traveling. This is definitely something which gains in importance. And secondly, the investment in greener models of transportation. How can we, as a group of people, privately but also publicly, really kind of change the way we kind of organize and we structure the transportation, and could it be any greener? This is something people believe is important and also will stay important. And once again, the deep dive into how do the actual behavior has changed. Here we do see that there are countries such as Germany where also perhaps you remember the kind of importance of domestic travel has increased significantly, where people also consciously deciding, I'm not boarding a plane. This obviously is easier to say if you're kind of closer to certain travel destination, but it is the number one aspect for Germany where people say, okay, I want to reduce my carbon footprint while not flying as much anymore. And the overall, which is kind of all kind of the three countries here reunite, is that they become more conscious and vary on the where to stay. So selecting the travel destination actually consciously on, okay, is it climate friendly? What's the carbon footprint of this destination I'm going to? A lot to digest. Let me try to sum it up. So, number one, the Russian-Ukraine war will have an impact on international travel. This is especially due to sanctions we do see for Russian travelers. This is something which also certain countries will obviously face much stronger. For instance, places like Turkey or Cyprus here in the EU with a high share of Russian travelers. Secondly, COVID has changed travel behavior, and more than every other, travelers think that actually this change will stick. It remains. This might have different reasons, but this is most likely to remain. Flexibility is very relevant, has increased in kind of demand and importance, and obviously there are side effects to it, such as a higher kind of demand for travel insurances. We do see a high demand in domestic travel across countries, particularly in certain which feel, okay, I do have travel destination I can kind of go to, and they're a very good kind of alternative. While also kind of more and more people think about kind of going on long haul kind of flights and travels. Once again, here, this is a trend we see more in continental Europe than in the US. And last but not least, and let's stay positive here, the worldwide travel tourism is expected to show a first kind of revenue growth against pre-corona levels end of next year. And also with all these kind of uncertainties and also these external effects, from what we know today is actually that this also will happen, although we do see wars and crises in other parts of the world. But hey, let's stay positive here. I hope we were able to give you a bit of background and insights of how this industry looks like. And I'm more than happy to get any kind of questions or remarks at a later stage. Otherwise, stay healthy, stay optimistic. See you soon.